the Panthers have to consider it, and it's being talked about, which is the reason why we bring it up. There is, surprisingly, I think, because there's this feeling in the NFL that wide receivers are a dime a dozen, that every year they're more ready coming out of college, they're ready to contribute right away, and let's just go ahead and bring in another stud from 23-year-old super stud. And then all of a sudden you get to this point in the season and there's a bunch of teams out there going, you know what we really need?
Huh.
We need wide receiver help.
We need one of those guys.
Yeah. The Chiefs, couple injuries. Suddenly they need wide receiver help. The Patriots need wide receiver help. You go around the league. Who knows what's going on with Davante Adams, who's hinting and there's rumblings in both directions that maybe he'll be on the trade block, in which case the Raiders need wide receiver help. There's a ton, right? And people are starting to look at the Panthers and going, you know what? That passing offense led by Andy Dalton, there might be some pieces there we could scavenge. And Diontae Johnson and Adam Thielen's name keep coming up. Now, start with the obvious. I truly don't believe there's anyone untouchable on this roster. I think it's tough to trade Derrick Brown because his value is going to be low right now due to the injury, so you're probably not getting an offer that you would accept. But I don't think there is no Luke Kuechly, Peppers, Cam, somebody who you pick up the phone and they go, so is so-and-so, click, click. Like, you don't have many of those, if any of those, on the roster. But even so part of it is, you have to consider Thielen and Diontae, but that's a cop-out and just say, well, you have to consider everybody. Even more so, you have to consider everyone that isn't under contract beyond this year. Diontae Johnson's contract is up at the end of this season. You have to ask a serious question for Diontae Johnson. And I don't know if you bring him in and you sit him down next to Dan Morgan and let Dan Morgan stare at him. Right? Dan Morgan take off those thick-rimmed glasses and really give him the old school, middle linebacker staring down the quarterback, and then go, are you willing to re-sign with us? Because if the answer is legitimately no, let us get something for you before we lose you for nothing in this offseason. And then you hear something like this from Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday talking about wide receivers that could be moved, and listen to how he deals with Diontae Johnson.
Adam Thielen, Diontae Johnson. Diontae Johnson's in the last year of his contract. He's going to be leaving Carolina after this year anyway. If they lose a few more games, why would you not be open to the idea of moving him if you got the right offer before the deadline? And I think the same would be true of Adam Thielen, a veteran who you probably would want to do right by.
He's going to be leaving Carolina this offseason anyway, is what he said there? Now, we need to consider the source here. Adam Schefter's an insider. Does he have insider information from Diontae Johnson's camp? Saying, there's no way he's staying in Carolina? Or does he have another team that's saying, hey, do you think you could kind of tug on that string a little bit, see if you can't get Diontae Johnson available for us so we can make an offer? Just start talking about as if there's no way he's going back. Then Carolina will panic and trade. You don't know. But if he seriously has let it be known to anybody that talked to Adam Thielen that there's no way he's re-signing in Carolina, you get something for him while you can. And he's coming off a big game. 2 of them. And the earlier you trade him, the more you'll get in return because they'll get more season out of Diontae Johnson. Similarly, looking at Adam Thielen, you have to consider trading everyone that won't be around to contribute when you're good. If you're 2 years away from contending, let's say this year is the figure-it-out year, next year is get the quarterback on the team year, the following year, full steam ahead. Adam Thielen is already the oldest wide receiver in the NFL by 2 years. Adam Thielen is 34. The next oldest wide receiver in the NFL is Keenan Allen, who's 32. If Thielen is going to be 36 by the time you're really willing to contend, before you let him walk for free, see if you can't get something from him. Now, and the last point here is I do understand playing Diontae Johnson out the rest of this year, even if he's leaving, if you had a young quarterback. Because then you'd be arguing, no, I want him to have at least, replacement level above average wide receivers as he figures out how to do this thing in the NFL. But with Bryce not out there, I think Andy Dalton's pretty well developed. I mean, like there's not that young guy who needs to have, good players around him so he knows what success feels like, so he knows what a good route looks like. It's a little the other way.
And if you're Diontae Johnson, if you built up that strong rapport with a young quarterback, be like, hey, look, we got something cooking here. We're going in the right direction. Yeah, I'll re-sign. I'll stick around because I know this guy's going to be here. But if I'm Diontae, I'm like, well, yeah, Andy might be here maybe next year.
Yeah, me and Andy, we really hit it off.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we did, but he might not be here after this season. So, like, what about my future?
He's going to be wearing a polo announcing games next year.
He's like, I spent 2 years having to deal with Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh and dealing with a young mess like that. No, I want to go somewhere where I can go play and win and make money right now.
And like, I understand because I know what the response is going to be. It's going to be Panther fans saying, you're talking about trading the guys. The offense just started looking decent, and you're already trying to move them. And I'm yes, but it's I believe you have to trust your decision maker in Dan Morgan, and it would be one step back for hopefully 3 steps forward. It would be one step back for the rest of this year, for hopefully 3 steps forward for the offense as Canales and Morgan mold it in their ideal image. And if you're looking for some kind of silver lining, I like the idea of Mingo and Legette getting more and more opportunity to either, for lack of a better term, do your business or get off the pot, right? Like, you have to decide whether Mingo is one of your dudes or if you're going to move on from him and you got to find a new dude. I think Legette obviously has a longer runway based on natural ability and just being younger, but you got to figure it out.
Give Jalen Coker some reps.
Jalen Coker had a deep ball intended for him over the weekend. Get him some reps. Get the ball to the tight ends more. Figure out which of those 17 guys that have been signed and released and signed and released since the beginning of training camp wants to hang around. But this is, by the way, a compliment. For the first time in a long time, other teams will look at the Panthers' offense and think, I want some of that on my team. You have value. You've played well enough that your players are rising in value. Now you can cash in a little bit of that. The last year, nobody at this point in the season was going, hey, our wide receiver 2 got hurt. What's DJ Chark's value? Like, what would that cost us? Nobody was doing that last year. I believe the Chiefs will probably call about Diontae Johnson. Whether you accept the offer is different because you don't want to get fleeced. You got to get value where it is. But your guys are playing well enough that somebody else is going to want them. Don't lose them for nothing. Don't get, because the other side is if Diontae Johnson's really out, if he's just bailing, then you have a 36, soon-to-be 37-year-old quarterback feeding the ball to a wide receiver just to make him more money from some other team this offseason. There's very little about Andy Dalton to Diontae Johnson without an extension or a re-signing this offseason. There's very little about Andy Dalton to Diontae Johnson that helps the Panthers at all beyond this season. And if you're Dan Morgan, if you're David Tepper, you have to think in bigger chunks than just the next game. You probably actually would have a really upset Dave Canales for a couple weeks.
Probably.
Dave Canales would, are you kidding me, Dan? And Dan would be like, no, play the young guys. And then it's like, I'm going to go to the gym. Like,
he'd probably say, hey, great opportunity.
Oh, actually, you're right. You're right. I completely misplayed that hypothetical.
Oh, yeah, he said,
Dave Canales
great
isn't mad at
opportunities for
Dan
these
Morgan.
other guys. Great opportunities.
Dave Canales is the only offensive head coach in the league you could trade away as number 1 wide receiver. He'd walk down to the GM and thank him. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to develop these younger guys and give them more reps and find a way for our offense to be successful without Diontae. Thank you, Dan Morgan.